Welcome to another episode of Career Talks Podcast. It feels like it's been a little while since I've been here, but we are back here with another amazing episode, the first of the Career Talks Podcast history, where I have a student from a local university who just blew me away when we first connected. So I had to bring her on. But before we get started, folks, making sure you are subscribing to the channel on all podcast platforms, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, etc. But let's get into it. So if you see the promotions and the copy on the promotions, I met Sandra almost it's I think it's been about a year, at least later last year, last quarter, at a University of South Florida event. So go Bulls for all the university folks that may be listening in. And she was just a dynamic young lady. It was during like a resume review. And she'll correct me once I bring her on. And so during our discussion, she was telling me about her career path in industrial, engineering. And I was just listening intently and just said, I don't think you're going to stay in engineering. And she was like, What? What do you mean? This is what I'm going for. This is what I love. I was like, I don't see that as a full-time path for you. And so I'll pause there, but we'll get into the conversation more. And let me just bring on this dynamic young lady, Miss Sandra Bayyat.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, Sandra, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you, Orlando?
Good, good. So excited. Is this your first podcast ever?
I've done a podcast before. I was actually a podcast host for my high school's.
That's
We
right.
had a podcast there. But I guess this is my first one in like the professional world, which is super exciting. And I'm so glad that you wanted to have me on.
Awesome. So is this your first time as a guest?
Yes, that's my first time as a guest.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Happy to inaugurate your first time guest podcasting.
Thank you. I'm happy to
Super
be
excited.
here.
Super excited. So share with the folks that are not familiar with who you are out there a little bit about who you are, your background, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Sandra Bayyat. I'm an industrial engineering student at the University of South Florida. It's been one semester with me in this major, and as Orlando was describing, I had done a few switches before I actually came to the conclusion of being here. But yeah, I had 2 semesters at USF as a biomedical engineering student, and when I had decided to make over the switch to industrial, it was something that was like very difficult, I think, for me personally, just because it felt like kind of a cognitive dissonance because that was the path that I was, I guess, supposed to take. That was the path that I was expected my entire life to kind of pursue, right? Something medical. And so kind of making the switch was really difficult, but it's super affirming to, I guess, be here, after a semester and having meeting so many people and networking. And it's been so amazing and so affirming. And the reason that I wanted to come on today, I mean, if you guys have read the title of Why Quitting is a Skill, it's something that kind of catches you off guard. But it's something that I feel really inclined to talk about because I don't feel like it's spoken about enough. And with how often it happens, I don't think it's normalized enough. So yeah.
I love that. Love that. Love that. Love that. So yeah, definitely it's a title that does throw people off and they're probably thinking, What do you mean this is a skill? What skill am I missing? What do I need to
Right.
develop?
What's going on?
Like, hey, what are we talking about here? Because yeah, a lot of folks are what they used to call or still calling quietly quitting, quietly resigning, whatever it is. The phrase has changed ever so often, but what's happening out there. But I think you're coming from a different perspective, which is good, which is really, really good. And so, but I
Definitely.
also wanted to remind folks that you're coming from a student, right? A student's perspective as well, Gen Z population. And so, what does that look like there? And so, the
Yeah.
first question I'll ask is when you think about why quitting is a skill, how does that resonate with you? And why did that resonate with you to discuss more about?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think um when I was initially, I'm gonna get on backtrack a little bit just to show or like illustrate why I think that quitting is it's positive and it's the reason why I'm here today. So in high school, I was very much an overachieving student. This wasn't that long ago. This was like a year and a half ago. I was very much overachieving, and I had put it in my head. I was like, I want to graduate at the top of my class. So I did. I took a lot of IB classes, AP classes, classes outside of like my school, just because I wanted to do the most, right? So I did them. I did all of those classes, and I ended up graduating at the top of my class. But then when the time came and I got my diploma and I had finished my valedictorian speech, I felt almost unfulfilled and like regretful, which is really ironic because it's something that I think a lot of people look up to. But I had gotten to a point where I was like, I wish I spent more time with my friends, or I wish I had spent more time learning about myself. I wish I spent more time reading. And it got to a point where I was like, okay, well, I have another 4 years at university. I can fix this, right? So I started out my first semester, and it was 4 hours in classes and then another 4 or 5 hours studying every single day. And it got to a point where I saw the patterns repeat again. And university is obviously where it really counts, because if you want to go to graduate school, you have to keep up a really high GPA. If you want to go into the workforce, you have to get internships, you have to do a lot of things. And I was putting in so much effort, but to me personally, and what I knew going into university is I think that I do my best. I give 110% when I'm fulfilled in myself and when I give myself the attention that I need. And I think that's super important. So my first semester, I was like, okay, I don't think that this is the path that I want to continue down for another 4 years. And coming to that conclusion, I think, was really difficult for me because my entire life, my parents were like, "You're going to be such an amazing doctor." You know, I'd give my dad Advil. He'd be like, "You're going to be such a great doctor one day." And I'm like, "Yeah, Bob, I'm 5." Um, but it's
That's
like those
hilarious.
little where it's like I was raised to, go down the medicinal route. But when it finally came to it, and I had really confronted the thought, right? And I had really embedded myself into biomedical engineering. I was in the societies, the research labs, everything that you can imagine, but I wasn't happy. And that's what sucks, is when you realize that the dream that you had isn't giving you what it thought it was going to give you, because ultimately what we're chasing is fulfillment and happiness. But I didn't get that. And I had to confront the thought of, okay, you can continue another 3.5 years doing this, or you can stop working against the grain essentially and do what is going to give you what you want, both personally and professionally. So I had talked to a bunch of professors, shadowed a bunch of classes in all engineering disciplines, and I had landed on industrial engineering because I felt as though it gave me what I wanted, and it works with the skills that I already have, and it makes them better. So kind of telling my friends that I was going to make the switch was really hard, but also the word quitting was thrown around. And I was like, I'm going to put that in my back pocket. I'm going to use that one day. And so quitting, essentially, that word verbatim was a word that was used towards me when I had made the switch. But had I not switched, I wouldn't be here today. I would have never met you because my discipline wasn't something that aligned with that. And I remember when I first told you, and I was like, I want to give back to other communities who may not be, or like other people who might not have the same opportunities that I do or the same privilege that I do. And I feel inclined to give back to them. And I knew that I could do that in other ways than just healthcare. And so I did. And I had finally made the switch. And I am so beyond happy with my decision. So yeah, that was like kind of a long-winded answer, but I hope it was good.
No, awesome. So when you were told, and we'll start to peel back the onion a bit. So when you
Yeah.
told from peers and saying you were quitting, they used that as you were quitting the discipline, as if you were quitting the entire your whole education, pursuit. And so they're like, "Oh, why are you going to a different industry or a different major? What's going on?" Was that how they kind of projected it towards you?
So I didn't use the word quit. It was used like, when people joke around and you're like, I know
Yeah.
there's a reason why you use that word, because every joke has the reason behind it. But that was the word
Hmm.
that was used. And I was fascinated because I knew that I knew the negative connotation behind that word and I understood it,
Hmm.
but I also didn't see why it should have been a negative thing, because just because, and I think that's something that we all need to confront, is just because something works out for someone else doesn't mean that it has to work out for me. And that's more than okay. But your responsibility to yourself and what you owe to yourself is that once you recognize that, you have to act on it. And you have to, once you realize that it's not giving you what you want, then you have to do what is best for you. And convincing yourself that that's the route that you should take, in some cases, can do more harm than good. So, like, even though they said that, I was like, in my head, I was like, I know I'm going to be so much happier in the classes that I'm going to be in anyways. So they can say whatever they want anyways. Like I was going to the resume workshops, and Orlando, by that time, I think it had been maybe like a week or two since I've switched. So I was very new.
Oh,
Yeah, I was very new to the discipline. But yeah, I think that's why I use that word, because I'm like, I'm sure that it gets used for other people. But
mhm, mhm.
because quitting is something that so many people like do all the time, and not because like, oh, you shouldn't, like if something is hard then you shouldn't do it. That's absolutely not what I'm saying. um but it's something very important for you to note, that quitting shouldn't have the negative connotation that we associate with it.
So what? Because I don't think I've ever, and I've been on this earth 50 plus years, right? So adulthood time frame, you talk about different phrases, self development, and things like that. And I don't think I haven't come across anyone in any profession at any age talk about the word the way you do it, or even say that word as if it were a a
A
a
good thing.
ethnic derogatory statement, right? So don't you can't use that word. And I love that
Hmm.
perspective from you. So where did that switch? Like when did you feel like where you were like, no, wait a minute, this no, it shouldn't be.
Yeah.
I'm going to empower myself with this word.
And what's so interesting is that I expected for a switch to happen for so long. That entire, like my entire fall semester, I was going to career coaches, I was going to professors, I was anybody who could talk to me, like has talked to me about this. Anybody who like was there in the university who had anything to do with either discipline, I've spoken to. And even when I did make the switch, I was still confused. But I knew that this was going to be the path that was better for me. It's funny because even when I went to switch, I had just gone to see how my classes would transfer. And then the advisor was like, oh, okay, well, I already dropped your classes. So let's get you signed up for some new ones. And I was like, you know what? I was like, this is fate. That I'm supposed to switch. And um for a lot of people, it's not something that just changes, because there's so many like confounding factors that go into it. And you expect like wake up one day with the epiphany of, oh my god, this is what I was supposed to do for the rest of my life. Now some people get that, and frankly I'm very happy for them. But the reality is that that's not how it is for a lot of us. And sometimes you have to make a choice, even if your hand is shaking. You have to speak up for yourself even if your voice is shaking. And so I knew that I had to put my ego aside of, okay, you, like, yeah, everybody expects you to be a doctor, but that doesn't mean that you should be. And it was a point where I was like, am I putting other people's expectations of me before my own like happiness and before my own fulfillment? And I realized, I was like, I that's not right. Because now when I come and speak about the major that I'm in, I'm so happy about it, right? And I think that had I stayed in my other major, I wouldn't have had the same inclination to like speak about it and condone it as much as I do in my major now, because I know what it's like to be doing something else and that I don't love. So now that I am doing something that I love, I'm like, oh my god, this is great, and everybody should make the switch, because even though it's hard in the moment, it's going to pay off. You might not see it right then, but it will at one point.
Awesome. Love that perspective as well. So two things.
Hmm.
One, I'm gonna take it back to our conversation where we initially met. And like
Yeah.
I said in the call, and I'll declare it again today, I still think within the next 5 to 10 years, you're going to be doing something completely different outside of industrial. I don't think you'll be in corporate, you know, act, as an active industrial engineer. I just don't
Hmm.
see it. Like I said to you
I
then,
hope
I think you're
I
going to be
hope that
gone
I can get
on
like
to
my
other
objective
things.
done. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Like I think
So,
my whole thing is like the entire reason I'm going to the workforce is because I want to benefit other people. Whichever way that I can do that, I'm more than happy to do it.
awesome, awesome. So when I told you that, what were you thinking post that networking event there? Like, what? What is he talking about?
I went and told my friends. That was the first thing that I did. And then I wrote it down in my journal, and I was like, "Oh my god." And I was honestly, I was so flattered that you had said that, because um like so often when we go to networking events, like from the perspective of a student, when we go to
Mhm.
networking events, I think we're so encouraged to maybe like not laugh out loud, or like I've been told don't wear a hijab that's too like colorful or too busy, or
Mm.
like things like that, where you're kind of encouraged to like dull yourself or not be your true self. And I was very new, so I didn't know any of that. I just went in, I was like, okay, yay, resume workshop, whatever. So it was so refreshing, I think, to see somebody who saw me for beyond my resume and somebody who saw me for who I was. And I was like overjoyed, and I was like, oh my God, like I wish this happened more often, because we're so used to people like dulling themselves in order to seem professional, when the reality is we're all going towards the same thing. And what sets us
Mhm.
apart is our personality. And I was so happy to see like somebody else had the same hobby of me with sorry, the same hobby as me of like having a podcast, because that's not something that people usually include on their resumes. And I was like, yay, now I have something in common with a recruiter.
So the second thing is, I think
Yeah.
you need to either write a blog or a book with that title, why quitting is a skill, or a
Yeah.
newsletter or something. I think you can expand on that for sure from your perspective. I really think, Sandra, that will empower a lot of people to switch their thinking, because that's what you're going to cause is a mindset shift, right? And
Mhm.
so not to the point where people say, "All right, I'm quitting my job," blah blah blah. But to know, like, hey, I'm going to make a decision that impacts my life the way I want it to. And if I'm quitting because it's breaking the traditional norm of what other people think and path I should go into, then that's okay,
Mhm.
right? And so
Yeah.
your methodology, I think, should be an awakening for a lot of people, both students and adults alike. So definitely consider that as you progress in your path, though, for sure. So I'll be checking in. I'll be checking in a
Yeah.
minute.
I'm glad.
So as you think about what's coming next for you, and as the word quitting evolves, where
Mhm.
have you been talking to other students about this, about your mindset? Have students come up to you and say, quitting is a good thing? Like, have you talked about this among small groups, and what if so, what's been that response?
So it's really funny because when I was like showing my bosses and stuff, I showed my boss the title. He was like, "What do you mean quitting is a skill? What are you talking about?" He was like, "What are you trying to tell me?" No, I was kidding. But like I think everybody was kind of waiting on my justification for like
Hmm.
why did you choose to speak about this? Because it's something that catches people very off guard because of the way that it's portrayed. Um, but that's exactly it. That's exactly the problem that I'm trying to address. And I really I really loved the effects that I had with quote unquote like quitting my major. And I'll expand on why. Because I think quitting biomedical engineering and kind of coming to industrial, I've become so much more confident in my choices, and I've learned to say no. I think as a woman in engineering, the reality is that there's number one, not that many of us, and number two, you kind of learn to appease everybody around you, which in a sense makes you lose your voice. And by like quitting and saying no to that major and being like, okay, I want to pursue this, I've not only learned to find my voice and my preferences and the things that I like, but I've also learned a lot more about myself because I'm giving myself that attention. So I know that when I show up to like an interview, or when I show up to a job or an internship or whatever it may be, I can outline exactly why I chose industrial engineering over electrical or over
Hmm.
biomedical or over chemical. I can tell you exactly why, and I can tell you why I'm the best candidate to do this. And in a sense, it's not just quitting, it's learning to choose yourself and act in your best interest. So yeah, and I think when I say like quitting, people are like, oh, so just like leave when it's hard, which is not it. And that's the problem, is that that's what we think it is, but it's truly
Yeah,
not.
correct. Love that. So as you think about the word quitting and you making the
Hmm.
choice for yourself, there are mental steps that we have to go through, right, to get to that point. Because earlier you said, I was scared, you wasn't sure, so you wouldn't spoke with everybody. Walk us through what steps did you go through, plus what was the emotional toll that you probably went through from a mental space and just, just fear and what you felt making that transition.
Absolutely. So, I had been meeting with a career coach from the beginning of my collegiate journey. So she kind of saw the ups and downs of I remember drawing out a whole T chart on her whiteboard, and I was like, okay, if I do biomedical, I can do XYZ. If I do industrial, then I do XYZ. And I had a pro and cons list for both. It was a lot. And all I wanted was for her to tell me what major I should pursue. And she would not. All I wanted for somebody to give me a black and white answer, and no one would. Because their logic is, well, I want you to make that choice, which in hindsight is like absolutely like, yes, that's what you should do. But I wasn't looking for that. I was looking for somebody to just tell me what to do because I was so like caught up in my own mind. So my conclusion was do more research. Fantastic. So I went to biomedical engineering research labs. I went to the chairman of BME at USF. I went and spoke to the chairman of industrial engineering at USF. I had him walk me through the entire like flowchart, all the courses that they take. I went and audited classes for industrial engineering, and I looked at what the seniors in both majors looked like, right? And I asked them personally. I said, "Okay, do you have time for yourself? Like, do you genuinely have time for school and for yourself?" And then I knew that that's what was most important to me is I want to be able to not only pursue like a good educational career, but I knew that in order to do that, I had to have time for myself because that's just how I work. That's not everybody's like that, but that's how I am. And I already know my nature. So I needed to leverage that to my advantage. And the industrial engineering students were where I saw myself in another 3-4 years. And I was like, that's where like the cognitive dissonance came in, where I was going to my biomedical engineering classes, but in my head, I was always comparing it to industrial engineering.
Mm.
So I think my final step with going to the advisor, I kind of already had my mind made up, but I was just scared to sign the paper. And when I did, I felt like Ariel signing her voice away, and I was like, oh my God, I can't go back. But I think I think that's part of the problem is that we often think that we can't go back, but that's not usually the truth. And frankly, it's very difficult for you to get yourself in a position where if you actually tried, you can't go back. And I like something that made me feel a lot better was I said, okay, if I want to go to medical school, I can still take another 3-4 classes and then boom, I'm pre-med again. It like I can do that
Mm.
even after I graduate. I don't have to do it all right now. And we put so much pressure on ourselves to make the decision in the moment. But I think I was already at a point where I knew what my values were. I knew what I wanted out of a major. All I had to do was just pick it. And that's what I was struggling with. But I think that even some people lack the first two components of what do you want out of your major and what do you want out of the workforce, right? What do you want like why are you going to get a job? What's your main goal here? Because getting the job can't be your goal. It's all part of like a bigger plan. And you need to obviously recognize what your values are. Do you like to spend time with your family? Yes. Okay, so don't pick a job that's going to take, 13 hours out of your day. Things like that. And so I think when you finally sit down and like confront yourself and sit with those thoughts, then your path it becomes a little bit clearer for you to discern what it is.
Mhm. So when you think about, because you said something pretty powerful there with the making the choice, and so you were sitting with a career coach and you wanted him or her, to make the choice for you. So
Mm-hmm.
obviously there was a switch or a fear or a block or something that was you were saying either I'm scared to make the choice for myself, I don't want to, I don't know what choice is right. So what was that switch there to where you said, you know what, I'm taking ownership.
Mm-hmm. I think I sat with her for quite a few sessions that semester, and all I wanted was for her to tell me what to do because obviously she would know more than I did, but I think I was looking for an answer not only because I was scared of doing it. I was scared of walking away from something that might have been good for me. So it was the potential of what biomedical engineering could do for me. And I
Mhm.
was scared of making the wrong decision. So all I wanted was to not feel regret. And I think that's a very unrealistic standard that, and like pressure that we put on ourselves, where it's like, yeah, sometimes you're not going to like your job, and that's okay. Sometimes you're going to love it. There's going to be parts of your job that you absolutely adore, and there's going to be parts of it that are like, okay, but there's nothing that's absolutely perfect all the way around. And that's something that, like, when you speak to somebody, they're going to be like, oh yeah, I love my job. Overall, they love their job, but it's unrealistic for you to put that pressure on yourself to be like, okay, well, I'm 18. I have to make this decision now because when I'm 45, I don't want to hate my job. Like, no, that's how I was thinking. And now it's like, you'll be fine. If I like I said before, if you want to pivot, you can. And nothing is black or white. If you genuinely wanted to, some people go to nursing school in their 40s because they just switched their mind and they wanted to become a nurse. Like, is there bachelor's in computer science? Maybe. Do they still want to pursue that? No. That's okay.
No. So talk to us about the pressure the Gen Z students are feeling today as you think about conversations you've had with your peers who may going through similar struggles, right? Do I switch? Do I pivot now? Do I wait? Are my parents going to kill
Mm-hmm.
me because I don't want to do X? I want to do Y. Talk to us about what are those conversations? What does it look like in the workforce now? We hear all this doom and gloom that may be happening and what's available to us. What are those conversations happening?
I think, especially with the groups that I feel like I'm associating with now as like sophomores in university, a lot of us feel behind, which is really funny because a few years ago this wouldn't have been a thing. But
Mhm.
I'm around obviously a lot of engineering students, and everybody's like, I have to get an internship. I have to get an internship. I have to get an internship. And that is 100% valid. Um, but it's something that everybody's kind of scared of, is we all want experience in the industry and we all want jobs, but you would find them usually like gravitating maybe towards seniors or towards people with a lot more experience. And I remember when I was switching and I was talking to my career coach and she was like, what do you like? And I was like, I don't know what I like because I haven't tried anything out. Like I just got here. And that's the truth, is a lot of us are looking for like experience, and we're looking for maybe like volunteer opportunities or shadowing opportunities. I tried to shadow like 3 engineers, and when they asked their bosses, they said no, which is totally understandable. But I think that those are the things where maybe you're expecting a student to come to you with like this epiphany of, oh my God, I love this major. But I think that it's time maybe to extend some opportunities to them where they can see what it's like a day in a life of whoever, like whatever the job is, like maybe as a process engineer. It's like, I want to know what you do. I want to know what skills I need to start working on from now, so that when I am applying to these internships, I'm a competitive applicant and they're looking to
Mm.
me and like, oh, like you're good at, I don't know, Arduino. And the student is like, okay, yeah, like I can do that. And you would get those certifications in time. But that's like definitely something that I think a lot of students around me are scared of, is kind of not getting employment right out of college. And you saw the the engineering, like, what was it, the job fair that we had? It
Mhm.
was humongous. Like, I had to wait 10 minutes. I was there for I think 3 hours, and I got to talk to 6 companies, which is not very
Wow.
efficient.
No,
Because there's
wow.
so many students. Yeah.
So, in thinking about the pathway, because you said also, my purpose. If someone's purpose is to get a job or mission is to get a job, like that's really not the big dream.
Mhm.
So you
Yeah.
think about what your goal is, and you think 2 years, 3 years down the line, or post graduation, right? Post graduation, what are you hopeful for, and where you're looking to take your career?
So me personally, I think my number one like thing right now is I want to help people who maybe aren't in the same positions that I am. So like whether that looks like working at a company that has a give back policy, right? Or working at a company where I can go volunteer at like schools so that little girls at engineering can see me and what I'm doing. But I think that's something that's super important, is bringing light, I think, to people who might not be in the spaces that I'm in. So that's like my biggest thing. Hopefully, I want to say like 10 years down the line, I want to have my own modest clothing company. So like manufacturing and things like that, which I think lines up very well with industrial engineering because it gives us experience with manufacturing. But
Mhm.
1000%, I want to have a give back policy. Whether it be like donations of food or like the clothes that we produce, where if you buy one, we have to give one away. But I think that that's like super nice. And I don't think that there's enough modest clothing companies on the market. So that's like totally something that I want to contribute to. But I'm 19, so it's going to take a little while.
Nope, that's you can start. Everyone starts their career or their entrepreneur journey with clothing on Etsy and all that stuff. So
That's
go
true.
for it, right? Go
Yeah.
for it. Yeah, absolutely love it, love it. And so, from a personal standpoint, so I'm Pentecostal, and so the modesty of dress is right in line with what I believe in my family, and so that's amazing. Love that we have
Yeah.
someone at your age thinking, hey, we don't need to dress a certain way. Modesty is also beautiful and acceptable in the world. So that's awesome. Love that. Love that personal mission. So you also mentioned the pressure, the conversations that your peers are having. If you had a room full of employers and they're sitting there, they say, "Okay, Sandra, you're the spokesperson for the class of 27, 28, whenever you do to graduate. What should we know now and how to support your upcoming graduation class when it comes to whatever internships, to attract the Gen Z students?"
I think something that Gen Z is, well, the first thing that I would say is I'm looking for summer 24 internships. But
Okay.
the second thing that I would say, um, I would say that Gen Z is gravitating a lot towards mental health. And in that sense, is they're very much, if my job is 9 to 5, then I'm clocking in at 9 and I'm leaving at 5 and I'm not checking my messages until 9 a.m. the next day. Which honestly, like as somebody who works in a job that like very much honors the hours that we work, I think it's so refreshing and it creates such a good working environment. Especially for me as an employee, is I love going to work because I understand that my bosses respect my boundaries, and if I have like an off day, or if I can't make it to work for a certain reason, there's no pressure and it's not a reflection on me personally. um but I think that I think that jobs should cater more towards that, like whether it be the person's like everything that's going on personally and they want like maybe more PTO or whatever. But I think it's looking at your employees as people first. So for example,
Mm.
it's like I want you to see me as Sandra, like I want you to see me as Sandra, like the Muslim hijabi woman, and then an industrial engineering student. Because before I'm a student, I'm a person, right? So before this person at your company is an intern, they're also a person with like feelings and thoughts and experiences. And I think it's very easy for us to get caught up in the thing where it's like, where you only see people as employees, which is understandable because maybe like you only have a professional relationship with them, but it's to also understand the nuances of what goes on behind that. And obviously we're all like pining for internships and co-ops now, but I think that's something that would make a company very attractive to a Gen Z audience.
Got it. Got it. Good to know. So hopefully, any employers that are listening now and or the post broadcast, you're taking note. We're going to make sure this conversation goes beyond what we're talking about now and just continue to push this forward. So with that, what's an ideal? You talked about it just now, a little bit of the ideal of the culture, right?
Hmm.
You hear a lot from, people are saying different things about work-life balance, the culture perspective. Like you mentioned, something that's a personal connection to the company, that's a give back option. What are some things that we don't know as employers that we should be aware of that maybe those conversations are a little more quiet because folks are a little fearful to say, hey, I also would like this as part of my package going into my
Hmm.
corporate career.
I think me personally, I would say the biggest thing, well, I'll start with two things. So the first one is culture and the second one is, I would say, PTO. So
Mhm.
with workplace culture, I think now the job that I'm working, I can go to any one of my bosses with, even when I was switching from biomedical to industrial, my boss was one of the first people that I went to. And that's actually how I met him, is because I was telling him about my struggles with switching.
Mm.
But you like, that's again with seeing people for their individuality and their experiences, because I got to learn so much about life if I just got to sit there and listen to the people around me. And that's a privilege that we don't usually realize that we have. But like, I can sit there and talk to my bosses and like have conversations, and I'm not intimidated or scared to go talk to them because of the culture that we have. Obviously, they're a lot higher up than I am, but I know that if I walk into their office and I'm like, my class was so hard today, they'll be like, okay, why? So it's kind of that. And like, even with today's podcast, like they're all being like so supportive, and I'm so excited for you to go on and things like that. And it makes me so excited to go to work, because I know that the people there love me for who I am outside of just being an employee. That's something I think is super huge, and I hope it continues at every company that I go to. But for the second thing, that's the PTO. I think that as the daughter of like, my dad was a software engineer, my mom is a teacher. But I saw my dad always at work. Like, he had to miss award ceremonies. He had to like miss field day or like whatever, like things at school, because he didn't have PTO. And if he like had asked his boss for that and his boss had said yes, I would have remembered that. And that's like what we kind of forget, is that these people also might have like extraneous circumstances that are going on that are out of their control, right? And I think if we cater to that, we would see a lot more kind of, I don't want to say joy, but you would see a lot more dedication when people come to work, because I'm like, I know if something happens, then it's not life or death. I might not lose my job. My boss would understand, and I would get that time, and I wouldn't have to compromise like $100 out of my paycheck.
Got it. That makes sense. That
Yeah.
makes sense. So let's talk about the positives. Some of the things that, or should I say, the things you yourself or the community of Gen Z workforce is not looking for based on what you've seen now, like to your point, the lack of PTO and the ability to be present for their family. So as you
Mhm.
talk amongst your peers, what are those things that everyone's saying? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. We can't if they don't have this or we're not doing this. What are the absolute turnoffs?
Honestly, I feel like we're so like at a loss for
Mm,
internships, I guess, that we're willing to accept any, like, if you go on Reddit, like, this is very interesting. People would apply to hundreds of jobs and maybe get 2 or 3 return offers, which is
mm,
absolutely insane. And I think we're willing to accept, like, I don't want to say anyone who says yes. Obviously, there's like some constraints, but I think it's a little bit harder to get us to say no. But what I will say is the working hours definitely are like very important. But I don't feel like there's any hard, like very hard no's.
okay, good to
Yeah.
know. Good to know. So let's drill down because one of the main things we hear, and I also had a young lady on, Danielle Farage,
Hmm.
who's like a Gen Z guru and kind of advocate. She's of that age and that demographic, and so when talked about Gen Z community is they're lazy, right? The methodology of thinking all they want to do is work towards projects that meet their personal passion or nothing. They don't put in the work the previous the previous age group did. And so, talk to us about the dispelling of the work ethic and
Hmm.
the overall mission and passion of the Gen Z community.
I think it's I think it's very interesting, honestly, that our generation gets painted as that, because there's a reason why we're here. And the reason is that we all had to watch our parents work tirelessly and give up time with us, that it's like something where it's like, I want to break the generational curse. And I'll speak to my own experience, because like I said, my dad was a software engineer, but his passion was his work. Like, he would wake up, code, breathe code, like, I don't know, whatever they do. So he was very passionate about that. And so he would love going to work, and he would work like 8 to 6. I remember like in 4th grade, I barely saw him. And so it was kind of like that, where I'm thinking now as I'm going to the workforce, is that a habit that I want to repeat? The answer is no. I want to have something where once I come home, I can give that time to my family. And I think I can speak for all of Gen Z when I say this, but if we're supposed to show up to work and like do our best and have our best performance, is that we have to be fulfilled in our own personal lives in order to contribute like 110% to the work that we're doing. Right. And so I haven't heard much about like, oh, they only want to work on their personal projects and whatnot. I don't think I have the experiences like speak on that yet. I think passion projects are something like so amazing and so beautiful, but only working to that and like having that constraint can be harmful in like some circumstances. And so I understand that point. But I think that our generation is kind of finally speaking up and drawing a hard line between, okay, I'm only working 9 to 5 and that's it. After that, I go home. And I think maybe if you keep working after that 5 o'clock and like your work becomes your life, when do you relax? Right. And I think that's like something that also goes with your own mental health, right? Because if you're working 24/7 and you're looking forward to those 2 weeks of vacation that you get just for you to go back to work for another 50 weeks, that's not really that healthy. And it might put you under some stress, which can reflect on your health.
Yep. So when you throw out the numbers like that, people are probably like, "That's true. 2 weeks break
Yeah.
for a 50-week run. How's that balanced?"
That's not how the week works. You know, we get
Yeah.
we get 5 days of work and 2 days of weekend. What's wrong?
We need the what is it, Tim Ferriss? What is it, the 4 day week?
Oh
There's
my
a lot of
God.
people.
Yes,
Yeah,
we
there's a lot of
do.
people talking about that we're moving towards that. So who knows? These are
Yeah,
some
no, even in
global
university
leaders.
now, like I have a 4-day work week. Technically, I'm on campus only 4 days, and I'm loving it. I'm like, I don't know where this was my entire life, but this is great.
So you talked about the clothing piece. Do you see yourself also doing public speaking, being out there more as an advocate for the Gen Z population?
I like absolutely. I definitely do. Not just I think that I would integrate that into whatever discipline that I'm working in, whether that be
Mhm.
um fashion or even if it was something like religious. But I think that I'm very much an advocate, or like anything that I believe in, I will use my voice to um kind of project that. And even like with my religion, with choosing to put the hijab on, that's me, like that's my outfit speaking before I can even talk to you. So I'm already conveying a message. Um but I've always loved public speaking. My like growing up, people were telling me either doctor or lawyer. Lawyer is still like it might happen at one point, maybe like in a few years I would consider law school. But yeah, I definitely think that that's something that could be in the cards for me.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, any way I can support that, feel free to reach out. No problem at all. Yeah. So, what are the things that I haven't asked that you think this community should be aware of? Because what a lot of people think or miss the opportunity to share, especially on a podcast, because
Mhm.
this is going to be evergreen, right? This is always going to run. It's always going to be out there. Have the opportunity to leverage this conversation for future things, right? You'll get the clips and all that, and highlighting your methodology and thought process. So, what else would you like to share before we close out that you think these folks should know? And I mean, your generation, my generation, corporate America, universities, etc.
I think that well, obviously I think with the title of the podcast that I chose today, um what I want for people to take away from it is number one, that it's okay for you to choose yourself. I think that so often we're so busy looking for the next best thing and kind of working forwards that we lose. There's a quote that I like to use. It's called "You're losing the plot," which means that you're going off of the plot of the story, and like you've completely like lost sight of what you're supposed to be doing. And it's very important for us to kind of like refocus and recenter ourselves on what we think is the most important. And with focusing on yourself, I think it's very important for you to learn about yourself, about your preferences, because that's what ultimately leads you to making healthy decisions and confident decisions for yourself. And it's something that would reflect for you for the rest of your life. Like, I decided to take that time for myself last semester, and I'm like already reaping the reward of everything that I chose to do before. So that's something that I highly recommend for people. And I'm scared that like they might skip over it because it might be inconvenient, but it is genuinely so worth it. Um, Let me think. I want to say be kind to yourself. We expect so much from just a few decisions, and it's not practical, and we end up putting so much unnecessary stress on ourselves. And it's okay for you to change your mind in the long run, but just don't quit something because it's hard. That's also something that I want to like preface with the name of the podcast, not the podcast, sorry, this episode, is just because if something is worth doing, it is going to be hard, but you must choose the hard that you want to deal with, and that's okay. um but yeah, I think that that's something that's super important that people should keep in mind, and it is never too late to go back to whatever you want to do. But I hope that this like resonated with some people, because it definitely resonated with me, and it's something that I wish I heard a few months ago. But now I
Love
get
it.
to be the one talking about it.
There you go. We'll see. Now you can replay it in your mind, right? You can just have this recording and replay it for yourself.
You're right.
Uh, so last two questions I always ask
No,
my
absolutely.
guest is the first one is what makes you get up every day, or you can answer either one.
Mhm.
What's your personal mantra that you live
Ooh, let me think. Because I haven't answered to both, but I'm like, I don't know which one is better. Um,
by?
okay, you know what? I'm gonna answer both. Is that okay?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Okay. Um, for me personally, I think that with everything very difficult that I've gone through in my life, and obviously the hardest part that I think I've dealt with so far was like it was losing somebody who was very close to me. And the only thing that got me out of bed every day was my belief in God and my trust in a larger plan. And that's something that I will live and die by. Anything that was written for you will happen. And this is a quote that one of the professors that I've spoken to when I was trying to decide my major, he said, there's this story, there's this like old, I don't know if it's like an Islamic story or an Arab one. I think it's probably Islamic, but this man had a camel and he was going to leave it to go to the store or something. And then this other guy was like, why are you leaving it like that? And then the first one goes, well, I trust that Allah is going to keep it where it is. Allah is God in Arabic. He said, I trust that God is going to keep it where it is. And then the other guy goes, that's not how you're supposed to do it. You're supposed to tie your camel and then trust in God that he's going to keep it where it's supposed to be. So what I got out of this is you can try as hard as you want to do whatever you want. But at the end of the day is you need to do everything that you can to achieve your goal, and then you leave the rest up to God. You leave the rest up to whatever was already preordained for you. And then the other quote was, I'm going to make a very beautiful life for myself no matter what it takes. Take whatever you have and make it beautiful because you deserve that much, probably even more.
Love it. Love it. Final question for you, Sandra. Where can
Yes.
people connect with you, reach out to you? Because you never know what can happen where people may say, I need you to come speak to our high school students. I need you to come to speak to this university of
Oh, I would
students,
love
right?
that.
Where can they connect with you to reach out, maybe be an accountable
Absolutely.
speaker for them?
Yeah, so my LinkedIn is going to be my first and last name, Sandra Bayyat. And if anybody wants to reach out to me through email, my school email is Sandra Bayyat, my first and last name, at usf.edu.
Love it. Folks, if you're not connected to this young powerhouse lady, you have absolutely need to. Um, I'm gonna work with you, but I want to work with you behind the scenes based on your schedule, my schedule, where you're putting your foot forward on this on content creation to kind of take a step forward in speaking more publicly. So I personally want to help you with that. So we'll connect offline and get that going. But definitely, like I said, and I'll declare it one more time. I see you doing greater things outside of, like you said, you'll keep it tied to engineering, but it won't be the only thing. You're gonna have a multitude of opportunities for you where I think you're going to be impacting a large community of young ladies and individuals across the board. So congrats in advance to you.
That makes me so happy to hear. Also, guys, it's 2025 internships for industrial engineers. I'm open.
Say it again. Say it again.
Shameless plug one more time.
Awesome, awesome. Appreciate it, guys. So make sure you're connecting and following Sandra on LinkedIn. If you want to reach out to her, she can get your email. I'll put it in the notes, post the broadcast as well. But make sure you tune in next time for the Career Talks podcast.